it?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to start by maybe talking a little bit about who Midpen is, so my employer, and the work that we do, and then I'll sort of allow that to sort of trickle down into what I do, and then I'll finish off by talking about my experience and how I got to my career, and how I sort of navigated making the choices that ultimately led me here. So, not exactly sure how many of you guys are familiar with Midpen, but if you guys live in this area, in the Bay Area, and you've gone on a hike somewhere off of Highway 35, you've most likely visited an open space preserve. So, Midpen is a special district that has preserved nearly 65,000 acres of public land, which is a lot of land that we manage. And we have 26 open space preserves all throughout San Mateo, Santa Clara, and sort of goes into Santa Cruz County a little bit. So if you live in one of these counties, like I said, you may have stumbled upon one of our preserves at some point. I know maybe Alicia has talked about Bear Creek Redwoods. That's within our district boundary. So what you see here in this little lime green, if you see my pointer, that's our district boundary. So that is the area in which Midpen operates. So that's where we purchase land, and that's where just jurisdictionally we're working. And our mission statement is to acquire and preserve a regional greenbelt of open space land in perpetuity, protect and restore the natural environment, and provide opportunities for ecologically sensitive public enjoyment and education. So that's a really nice way to sort of summarize everything that we do. But I'm going to talk to you guys about how we do that and the main things that Midpen sort of focuses on. The very first is, of course, acquiring the land. So as you guys saw in this map, we've acquired a lot of um, a lot of land since 1972 when Midpen started. Midpen does a lot of research and a lot of their homework on what lands, what properties would be strategically important to purchase, whether they complete a preserve. We're looking to create new preserves. We're always looking at all of the different resources that are within that property that we can protect, and that is of high importance to our mission. Oops, sorry, that was a little bit out of order. So we do three main things in the sort of umbrella of resource management, which is what we sort of focus on. One of the very first things that's really important to us is protecting and restoring sensitive animal and plant habitats that are native to the area. So that is one of the major things that we try and do when once we purchase land. The land is not always in the best condition, so Midpen has to sort of go in and do a lot of cleanup, a lot of rehabilitation, so that these native plants and other animals species can thrive. We do this through projects like the Highway 17 Wildlife Crossing Project. So as you guys may know, Highway 17 connects us to Santa Cruz, but also creates barriers to safe passage for wildlife. And as you can imagine, it has fragmented thousands of acres of open space in the Santa Cruz Mountains, which limits the availability of finding food, mates, and habitat, especially for like mountain lions, which tend to need a big sort of open space to roam. And it also blocks several regional trail connections. So Midpen is currently working on creating a wildlife and regional trail crossings along Highway 17 to connect like about 30,000 acres of protected land. So that is one way in which we not only are purchasing land for the enjoyment of others, but we're also always trying to find ways in which we can have a positive impact to that local ecology. Also studying like things like some oak death that affect oak trees and things. So these are all sort of things that we do to support our mission. We also do a lot of responsible conservation grazing and wildlife fire prevention. So as you guys you guys don't need me to tell you how horrible the wildfires are here in California. But that is one thing that we do, since we manage so much of this land, and we try to sort of prepare for those things. So this is sort of in a nutshell some of the major goals. And if you guys are interested to learn more about the conservation piece of it, I definitely suggest that you guys check out our 2014 vision plan. It's the Conservation Atlas that sort of has these wonderful maps. I wasn't there when they created these, but all of these wonderful maps on the district's vegetation types, rare and threatened plant species that can be found here, instances of an oak death, watershed ratings that are important to us, excuse me, watersheds that we rate that are important for specific coho salmon populations, and then critical habitat linkages also. And you can see that this is all within our district boundaries. So it helps us plan. The vision plan not only helps support the natural resources, but it also helps us sort of plan for the future of conservation and other future opportunities that Midpen can look at in terms of like land that we might want to think of purchasing for conservation purposes. And finally, one of the main things that we do is open up this land to you. These lands are your lands. They're open to you guys 365 days a year, and they're for yours to enjoy, to bring, to come and enjoy the open space. So, what do I do? Well, I support my organization. Like I said, I'm a GIS technician. That stands for Geographic Information Systems Technician. And I support my organization with GIS. As you guys may know, I'm not exactly sure where you guys are in your levels of GIS. And maybe you guys have touched on some web GIS, which I think is wonderful. But as you guys may know, when you look at a map that was created in GIS, every single feature, every line, point, and polygon that's on that map has data behind it, driving that. These are not sort of just pictures that you would create on Adobe software like Illustrator or Photoshop. These are actual data that are represented in forms of lines, points, and polygons. So a lot of what I do is data management. GIS sort of touches a lot of different corners in our organization, and pretty much every department in our organization has some sort of GIS component to it, whether it be the assets, the land itself, when we go out and collect data for potential trails, and collect data on certain plant species or anything like that. It all sort of gets recorded into this database. So a lot of that. Also do a lot of web GIS. I help create web applications for our staff. I train our staff on how to use these when they go out in the field and collect data with their iPads or phones, or not phones, but only iPads in this case. And so we also manage those things. And I'm also a GIS resource to my colleagues. So whenever anyone has a question, because we do have people who do use GIS, but not to the level that we do. And so sometimes they forget things, and we're there as a resource. But the main thing that that sort of takes up a lot of my work is the maps and cartography that we produce. And these are maps for outreach, presentations, for planning, for public meetings, research and analysis, and as well as for private internal meetings. And all of the maps if you were to go to our website, any map that you see, 97% of them will probably have been produced in-house by us, which is pretty impressive. With the exception of some that were in reports from consultants or things, but we do a lot of the mapping in-house. And so, yeah, that's what I do and what I love to do. And I'll just share a couple of maps with you guys. So Alicia wanted me to share this one that I did. I didn't do this while working at Midpen. I did this before I started working at Midpen. But this is a project that used GIS and that sort of got me introduced to conservation, restoration projects, and those kinds of things. Because as I'll talk about later when I talk about my career, it wasn't really the main focus. So this is Olastack Park. It's in Santa Clara, the city of Santa Clara. It's one of the last pieces of open space in the city, and this project I worked on with some folks from the city and some folks from University of Santa Clara to collect data on all of the native trees, shrubs, and herbs that were part of our restoration project throughout the park. They wanted to sort of monitor these plants and make sure that the investment that the city was making was definitely worthwhile. So I created an app using Collector, which is an Esri product, to go out with volunteers to collect a lot of this data. And so the map in the middle is really the actual important piece. The rest is sort of like the finished, polished product. But each one of those points, like I said, represents a point of data. Each one of those points is a record in a table. This is what it looks like in the unpolished end. It's a record in a table that gives you all the sort of attributes for that data point. In this case, we were collecting things like the type, whether it was a tree, shrub, or herb, the type of species, the common name, and then the condition that it was in. And so all of this data collection that I spent doing was really powerful, and it really set me up for my job at Midpen. At Midpen, we do a lot of mapping. Again, I do a lot of mapping from a wide range of sort of needs, fulfilling a lot of different needs, whether I said presentations, going into a report, RFPs, for research. This is a series of maps that I created for the La Honda Creek Open Space Preserve. It's in San Mateo County. And the purpose of these maps was to help my planning department find or help communicate with the public the location of a new the location for a new parking lot. Midpen really wanted to advocate for putting that park in right off of Highway 35. Right, if you've driven across Highway 35, you'll have seen a really cool, iconic red barn. That's where they were choosing to wanting to build the parking lot. And so my job here was to sort of create a series of maps to help the public understand that this was really one of the only locations that was available for that parking lot, because folks were concerned with traffic and things like that. But Midpen really wanted to offer access to this open space preserve from this point. And so you'll see, for example, the first map here is a topographic map showing the percentage of slope, right? So all of the red is really steep areas and slope where slope is above 8%. And all of the areas in green, which are not very many, are the areas where it's relatively flat and a really good place to would be suitable to have a parking lot. But then you get into, and then the other map is meant to show the natural resources considerations. So why you would, even though it's like flat here, why you perhaps wouldn't want to build a parking lot there. Because other data layers will show you that there's sensitive natural resources there, whether it be a riparian zone, ponds, and we don't want to sort of interrupt those sort of sensitive areas. Also, special attention had to be paid to the conservation management units, which are areas that are only for conservation, so we can't even build trails there. And then to the ownership, and then a map showing sort of the ownership and grazing. We definitely don't want to build a parking lot where there's active grazing. And so what these maps really, and what a lot of maps that we produce at Midpen really aim to show folks is that is to help them tell a story and help them build a narrative with data and analysis. And these are the sort of things that are used in my organization to make decisions, make smart decisions, and make decisions that are the best for our organization. So these are examples of some of the maps that I've sort of made and the work that I do. But how did I get here is a really big question, because I was never, when I was in undergrad in community college, I started off in community college, but when I was in undergrad, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I graduated 4 years ago from San Jose State, and I got my bachelor's degree actually in sociology and urban planning. At the time, I wanted to be a teacher. I also think I wanted to be a social worker, which is why I majored in that. But because I took a lot of classes in my minor, and those happened to be GIS classes, I got really interested in urban planning and GIS in general. I took an intro to GIS class and an advanced GIS class. That's where I met Alicia, and we worked on a project that we later went on to present at the Esri conference, Esri Users Conference, or Esri Education Conference, and at Cal GIS. And so these sort of things sort of solidified my decision to go right away to grad school. So I graduated in the fall of 2016, and I really quickly after that decided I really want to go to grad school. So in the fall of 2017, which was a year later, I started graduate school at San Jose State, and this time pursuing my master's in urban and regional planning. And throughout my stay at San Jose State, I did a number of really cool things. So I first worked really hard to do some internship work. So I worked as a GIS intern for the city of Burlingame. I worked on that really cool GIS data collection project for Illistack Park that I shared with you guys. And these sort of things gave me the experience that I needed to get an internship at GIS as a GIS intern at Midpen. And 7 months later, I was promoted to full-time GIS technician, which is wonderful. And this past May, I graduated, literally this past May, graduated with my master's. I don't know if you can see that, sorry. Graduated with my master's, the focus in planning technology in GIS. And so now 2020, looking back 4 years ago, I mean, I can't really imagine that I was going to be working here and doing the work that I was going to be doing. But the main takeaway from this that I think is really important is that you don't really know. And as you get older and as you sort of talk to other professionals and you ask them what they studied in college and what they're doing now, you'll be surprised. Sometimes people are not doing anything really relevant to what they initially got in their degree. And I would say that I loved my major in as an undergrad, but I don't think that I would have imagined myself working where I am today. I just sort of progressed, chasing sort of what I was really interested in. And at the time, I got an interest in urban planning and GIS. And then as I sort of progressed, sort of followed that path, I could have done more planning internships, but I decided that GIS was really something I was really interested in. And so I continued pursuing that until I ended up where I was today. So there's no one linear path, I would say, towards your ultimate career goal. But there are so many avenues that you can take along the way. And so as an undergrad, I would just say my major piece of advice would be really, it sounds a little cliche, but really just sort of follow what you like. If you're taking a class when you realize that that is really piquing your interest and you see yourself liking what you're studying, I would say go for it. There will be so many more career opportunities for you out there. And that was definitely my story 4 years ago. I wouldn't imagine having been where I am today. And having met so many wonderful people that helped me get there. But that's sort of my path to where I came, to where I am today. And I think I might be done with my slides here. So I'm free to take any questions. If anything was interesting to you, or if you guys are curious about something else or want me to follow up, I'm more than happy to do that.
Already has her hand up.
Who has their hand up?
Lauren.
Oh, Lauren. Hi. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay, hi. So how often is this GIS technology used in the Bay Area when private companies are trying to develop